Hey there, APUSH Nation. Mr. Zagari here for the latest edition of APUSH on the Road. And we are, if you can't see behind me, yes, that is an F14 Tomcat. And no, I am not in flight school in Miramar, California. I am at Grumman Memorial Park out here in Calverton, but I am wearing my really cool aviator sunglasses for the occasion. Now, what are we doing here? Well, I actually took the Eisenhower Interstate Highway, also known as 495, the Long Island Expressway, to get out here. And I figure since we are doing a Cold War lesson, we've been doing the Cold War, we are getting into Vietnam, we are going to be getting into the 1980s pretty soon, why not come to one of the most iconic fighter planes and bomber planes of the Cold War. So, first, a little brief about Grumman and Grumman here on Long Island. So Grumman was created by Leroy Grumman in the 1920s, and it was the largest corporate employer on Long Island during the Cold War. Roughly close to 26,000 people, Long Islanders, were employed by Grumman at its height in 1986, right in the height of the Cold War during the 1980s. What we're also going to see is that Grumman was part of Eisenhower's military-industrial complex. Grumman made defense weapons. They were known for their cats. During the 1940s, they made the Hellcat, which was during World War II, and then during the 1980s, they made, as you're going to see in the backdrop here, the Tomcat. Now, what we're also going to look at here is that their downfall was the peace that brought an end to the Cold War. The defense industry is going to be the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower told us about, but now what we're also going to see here with Grumman is that another component of Eisenhower's plan, they also played a role in creating space technology. They created the lunar module that put a man on the moon in 1969, so they were big players in space. So they not only were part of the military-industrial complex, but they were also part of space, part of building. They were a contractor for NASA that built various components for the different spacecrafts and lunar modules that went into orbit. Okay, our first plane that we're going to be looking at here is the Grumman A6 Intruder, which was in service by the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps from 1963 until its retirement in 1997. Okay, this bomber, which was its primary role, was a carrier-based bomber, and that's what we're going to see with the Intruder and Grumman on a whole, is that they were primarily a Navy company. They produce many products for the United States Navy. They were a naval contractor. Now, the A6 Intruder was a Vietnam-era carrier-based bomber as well as a tanker. You could see there, I'll zoom in. Okay, that was for taking on fuel as well as being a tanker for other planes. We could see here, there's my son in the foreground there, but these are exterior drop tanks, and they were also used for refueling planes during long mission. This plane was also used obviously for its heavy bomb load, and as well as radar intercepting and radar jamming, and later on its career for reconnaissance. As you could see, a close-up will look at the various film and later, I guess, digital cameras that were used. You could see the flight, not the arresting gear, but just the landing gear, how heavy-duty the landing gear is for the violent landings on aircraft carriers. And then we're also going to see with the A6 Intruder, it is a two-seater, and it's manned by a pilot and a bombardier. The pilot is the driver, and the bombardier is the weapons specialist as well as the navigator. And this is an all-weather bomber, okay? An all-weather bomber. It primarily did its job at night and during poor weather. It did not carry a gun, so it had really no defensive weapons on it, okay? It was primarily an offensive weapon. They would have to use various fighter planes to fend off a MiG attack or surface-to-air missiles. This plane itself was part of the USS Enterprise strike group, which we could see here, all right? And many of these bombers were used during the Easter Offensive during the Vietnam War in the early 70s, also known as Operation Linebacker during the Nixon administration. This is the A6 Intruder. Okay, probably one of the most iconic American fighter planes ever to take off from an aircraft carrier, the F14 Tomcat, made famous by the 1986 movie Top Gun. Now, the Tomcat, the F14, was to replace the F4 Phantom, and it was first produced in early 1970 and came into action after the Vietnam War. This is another, obviously, a carrier-based plane. We can see with its heavy-duty landing gear, as we saw in the front on the Intruder. And then this one also has, if you look at the very tip, you see that long arm coming off the landing gear. That's actually to put the plane into the catapult of the aircraft carrier that would catapult it off the deck. And then on the reverse of it, you see the tail hook, that hook right there, and we'll go underneath it. And this tail hook, okay, right there, the tail hook actually hooks onto the arresting cable as it comes in for landing. And you saw an up-close picture of this plane on Katie's video that was on the USS MiG. And if you haven't taken a look at that, I highly suggest you take a look at that video because it's absolutely excellent. So, again, carrier-based, this is an air superiority aircraft. It's for primary purpose, fleet protection, and interception. So what this is to do is to intercept any threats coming to the fleet, as well as intercept any Soviet bombers, MiGs, anything. It's there for dogfighting, okay? It's made for dogfighting. It's got swept wing design. The wings articulate, so basically what that means is that on takeoff, the wings will be horizontal, and then as it goes into supersonic mode, which is when it's gonna break the speed of sound, they will be swept back. Tomcat, I believe it was Mach 2 was its max speed, which was 2 times the speed of light. Speed of sound. It is a double-seater. The front is the driver, the pilot, and the rear is the RIO, or Radar Intercept Officer. That was Goose in the movie. Maverick was the pilot. And you see right underneath the 3, that little pod, they call that the G-pod, okay, or the gun pod. That's where the cannon was placed. And then also this has 2 exterior drop tanks for extra fuel storage. And then you see the missile harness right here, okay, where they would have the ordnance that were on these planes. These planes were, again, used to intercept and to take down enemy MiGs, as well as any type of threat to the carrier. These were the eyes, the ears, and the weapon system of the aircraft carrier, and without a doubt, the most iconic plane in the United States inventory. This plane was last deployed in 2006 when she was retired, and it was last deployed on the USS Teddy Roosevelt. I will put a link in here of when these 2 planes, not this one specifically, but when the Tomcat, they have footage of 2 Tomcats squaring off against 2 Libyan MiGs. You could hear the pilots talking, and you could hear when they were actually in a dogfight. So I'll drop that in the description. Okay, so this is the F14 Tomcat. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of APUSH on the Road from Grumman Memorial Park.